So James Spader and Marisa Tomei star in a cat-and-mouse crime thriller, where the most interesting story is how Keanu Reeves got conned into playing the role of the serial killer in a former friend's feature film directorial debut. So let's take an in-depth look at The Watcher. FBI Special Agent Joel Campbell is haunted by his last encounter with serial killer David Allen Griffin in Los Angeles, and the woman that he failed to save. Now in Chicago, Campbell is burned out on an array of prescription meds and attends therapy sessions with Dr. Polly Beelman. When a young woman is strangled to death in Campbell's own building, it's not until the next day that he realizes that Griffin has been baiting him with photos of his would-be victims in his days-old mail. Campbell connects with Chicago Police Detective Hollis Mackey after getting a green light from the FBI to assist in the investigation. Griffin himself calls up Campbell, telling him the rules of his game, giving him 1 day to identify and locate his next victim, with only a photograph to guide him. Griffin then targets photo store employee Ellie Buckner, charming her in the process, all the while knowing he intends to kill her. The police utilize the media to aid them in a race against time and canvassing the city with all possible leads, but their efforts come up short when Griffin strangles her with piano wire in her own apartment at 9 o'clock that night. It's not long after before Griffin courts his next victim, Jessica, a homeless runaway panhandling on the street. Yet later that night, while eating out, Campbell and Mackey catch on to Griffin's voyeurism, realizing he may be watching them right then, and end up chasing him down outside. The next day, Griffin, benefiting from no one knowing what he looks like, shares an elevator with Campbell, with both on their way to appointments with Dr. Beelman. Griffin cases her office, but learns that she tape records her sessions, which leads to him breaking in and stealing Joel's session tapes. Meanwhile, the game has started all over again with a new photo, yet with help from Jessica's mother, Campbell pinpoints a neighborhood to canvas, where he rouses a friend of Jessica's into leading them to where she is, as time grows short. In a warehouse, Griffin stalks a runaway teen through the shadows, but Campbell is too late to stop him from claiming another victim. Yet a chase ensues into the streets of Chicago, ending with a fiery blaze and explosion, but Griffin gets away again. Later, Special Agent in charge Mike Gibby finds Joel unconscious at home and is immediately hospitalized, where Dr. Beelman pays him a visit to check in on him. There he sees the photo of the next victim is actually Lisa Anton, the woman who Campbell failed to save in Los Angeles, and is buried in Chicago. Campbell visits the gravesite where Griffin is waiting for him, baiting him with Dr. Beelman now held captive elsewhere in the city. Now Joel must go along with his final piece of their game, which may claim more innocent lives before it's all over. So September 8th of 2000 saw the release of The Watcher, distributed by Universal Pictures, and really didn't set the world on fire. Like, the film grossed about $47.2 million off of a $33 million budget, which doesn't get you very far in the world, and neither did the reviews. Like, the few people that gave it any type of positive review were just saying, like, it's good, turn off your brain, junk food, popcorn, cinema. Either you're going to be engaged by it as just kind of tropes and cliches all over the place, or you're just going to be turned off by it entirely. So, pretty much the return of box office really kind of showed, and really didn't turn a lot of people on that regard. But the film and the entire thing came from directorial debut of Joe Charbanic, who kind of developed this entire idea, like the cat and mouse game, which is like, by 2000, we've seen this tons of times, so many times before, but a lot of instances where it's done exceptionally well. But again, gets picked up by this company called Interlight, which was a very short-lived production company. I looked them up, they got about 9 films to their credit all day long. And so they kind of get up on this entire thing, kind of help them develop it, and got some people involved with it to kind of help the story, build out the screenplay and stuff like that. Like, there's a story credit for Darcy Myers, who doesn't have a whole lot of anything. You got something from Clay Ayers, who also doesn't have a whole lot of anything. Then you got David Elliott, who has a little bit of something. Like, he's got credit on G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, and the John Singleton film, Four Brothers. So a little bit of something forward from him, but everyone else just never really got much of a traction in their credits and their careers. And so that kind of reflects a lot of things going on from this point forward, especially for director Joe Charbanic, because after this, at the time of producing this video, he's not directed another feature film. Nothing at all. He's done like a short film, some very minor stuff in terms of producing, a few things here and there, just not a lot of stuff going on for him. And the fact of the matter is, all the stuff behind the scenes seems to come from all the conjecture and the speculation and the kind of piecing together some vague comments here and there about different people, especially interviews with Keanu Reeves and Joe Charbanic, that things really fell off between the two of these guys because they were friends for about 10 years before this. They met up, kind of played hockey together. He shot a bunch of music videos for Dog Star, Keanu Reeves' band, and just kind of got along very well. And the fact is, when he was developing the screenplay, he kind of gave it off to Keanu Reeves, and it's like, there's some word back and forth whether or not he really was as interested and whatnot in the first place, but it seemed like he eventually got interested in maybe playing this kind of darker serial killer role, which would be kind of a departure from him. Something to play against type, something a little bit challenging, but in the original screenplay, it was a much smaller role. It was almost like a cameo. Like maybe they kind of play a lot of mystique with the entire story there, and maybe it kind of really shows up at the end. They can give a little bit of a splash for it and reveal them, and then it's done. So maybe a couple of days work for Keanu Reeves on set, and nothing else really there. But the fact of the matter is, the thing came to a head where everyone kind of believes, from all the little pieces of information that have been put out there, that Charbanic forged Keanu Reeves' signature on the contract with Interlight. And so obviously that's completely illegal. And it kind of got into a situation where, one, he's going to be paid scale now. He's not going to be paid real money that he would be paid for any real role in this entire thing because it gets expanded out. Once he gets in the hand of Interlight and he's signed on, and without script approval in the contract, the entire role gets completely blown up, and now it's like a secondary lead in the film. It's not this little cameo type of thing you shoot in a couple days. It's going to take a couple of weeks. So he's getting paid very low money for a very starring role where definitely, as the entire decade of the 90s is going on, he's built up Bill and Ted, Point Break, Speed, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Devil's Advocate, all these different films are really baking up very hard. Of course, this is right after The Matrix hit and made him a really, really mega star in that regard. So he could demand a lot of money for a role of this size, but now he's locked in this contract where you could go to court and spend a lot of money and a lot of time battling the entire thing to kind of prove that this guy's forged your signature and try and get out of this contract. But people in Hollywood have tried to get out of these binding contracts before under kind of contentious circumstances, and some people have lost millions of dollars. And Keanu just felt like it's not worth the money, it's not worth the risk, not worth the effort, not worth the aggravation to go off and try to battle in court with this whole thing. So he decides to go in with it, despite being very much upset with the entire thing. So you gotta be on the set with a guy that kind of betrayed your trust as the director and kind of work with him every single day here. And it's gotta be a terrible thing because James Spader and Marisa Tomei get signed on to film because Keanu Reeves is now attached to it, and they get paid $1 billion a piece. And so they're getting paid way more, where Tomei's got a lot less screen time than Keanu Reeves has in this film, and Keanu Reeves has almost as much time as Spader does. So it's very much imbalanced in that type of way there. And the fact of the matter is, the entire thing's produced by Interlight and then picked up by Universal Pictures afterwards for distribution. Now, distribution from Universal meant that they kind of apparently, supposedly, worked out much more profit participation deal for Keanu Reeves after the fact. They kind of learned about all the kind of machinations behind the scenes and the combative type of things. It felt like, yeah, we're a big studio. We like Keanu. He's a big star. We could work with him in the future. Let's kind of grease the wheels for him, make him a little happier in the entire thing, be involved in the whole thing, and agreed to let him not do any promotion for the film. He didn't do any interviews, anything like that. His face is not on the poster. His name is kind of subsidiary underneath Spader and Tomei, so he's kind of downplayed in the marketing, still being featured, but not being big and featured in the type of way. So a lot of things kind of smoothed over by Universal after the fact, but since it was just a kind of a negative pickup for distribution, they really couldn't combat the things that are happening at the head of the entire situation there. And in attracting all these big names, they also attracted cinematographer Michael Chapman, who had shot Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, The Lost Boys, The Fugitive. This guy is one of the best cinematographers in the field at the time. And unfortunately, nothing really had that kind of like stands out that makes him shining type of way. There's nothing like any kind of inspired visuals here. There's nothing like painting with light or anything very kind of striking that way. It's all just very completely shot, completely lit, all very nicely edited type of stuff. Just like you'd expect something like really expressive and impactful from the cinematographer of this caliber. why would you get something that's so good at the entire thing and not really invite more of his sort of input and style and his artistic eye and whatnot? It just feels like it's all very just kind of by the numbers type of thing to be shot this type of way, when you could really have gotten some amazing stuff from him to really kind of enhance the film in such an amazing type of way. And apparently there was even additional photography done by cinematographer Rick Waite, who shot some phenomenal looking films, like he shot 40 Hours, Red Dawn, Footloose, Cobra, Adventures in Babysitting, Marked for Death, Out for Justice, Rapid Fire. This guy can shoot wonderful stuff. And again, it just doesn't feel like either one of their cinematic sensibilities really come through on screen here. But credit where it's due for Charbanic. He does do a fine job in some places. There's some splashes of inspiration here. I like some elements in the entire film when you're dealing with the entire aftermath of all these type of kills. And they kind of always have these little beats after the fact. After you've done the cat mouse type of stuff or the big suspense sequence, stuff like that, they always flash on a little bit of something that kind of beats back to the emotion of the entire thing. Kind of remember the victims. And that kind of brushing away to kind of push forward the story and take a step back a little bit to kind of think about it and kind of ruminate on it for a moment and then move the story forward. So I like that kind of touch. Something that's in the screenplay, but definitely a director could kind of say, oh, we don't need that, or not kind of care about that much. But they took the time to take that moment there. So I very much like how they kind of kept that sort of thing in mind for the film, to kind of have a little bit of empathy for everything that's going on for the characters in the story. On the hunt for the victims, all the type of stuff, they're trying to track down these women from the photographs of Griffin given Campbell. I like how that entire thing's given such an urgency. It's all cut very well. It's all put together. It's all structured very nicely to keep the rising tension going. You're racing against the clock. And I like how all this stuff is built up very, very well there. And Charbanic handles all the drama, the suspense very, very well. It's all very nicely, solidly handled in that regard. There is kind of one stylistic choice that feels kind of odd, that it comes up early in the film, and I think it's just kind of like Griffin was sort of like a video camera spying on people, but eventually when you get to the scene where Griffin goes in under their sort of a pseudonym to see Marisa Tomei's psychiatrist character, they're using it as his own personal POV. I just found that a very odd type of thing. It's like, one, it makes it very dated. To make it look like it's VHS footage in type of way in 2000, and just like it just seems like a very dated choice that doesn't seem like it's motivated by anything. I get kind of a voyeuristic sense. I wanted to do something that kind of makes it feel like it is his point of view looking at things, but to make it like a videotape type of thing just doesn't add up. There's no context for it. It doesn't mean anything in the grander story of the entire film. It would work better if he was kind of videotaping people and you're kind of peering in through that type of lens, but they're not doing that. So it's very much a choice that doesn't really make sense in the context of what the film's going for. And there's a couple other things that do feel kind of dated in the entire film, like the opening title sequence definitely feels like it's so 1999, 2000. And so it's just the style of it, the look of it, the sort of hyper saturation, slow shutter speed type of thing. It just feels very much of that time. Like I saw a couple of music videos that look like this at the time, and they don't hold up very well either. And just a few things here and there that's like, some of the choices made just don't seem like they accentuate the best qualities you get out of the story from a directorial standpoint. Certainly some that should be from the screenplay, but you can take some things as a director, as visual cues, delve in entire ways to use the visual medium to tell the story more than what the screenplay actually gives you, and kind of peer more into it through the lens of the camera, and accentuate that with a cinematographer who definitely is extremely capable of accentuating those types of ideas there if you chose to go that route. And while there are a couple actors in the film that I do feel like are very underutilized, James Spader is not one of them. Like, he's great in the role of Special Agent Joel Campbell here, dealing with this character who's just a complete burnout. It's like, this guy's hooked up on so many drugs to keep him patched together psychologically, physically. He's got these migraines, he's got all these different things. Just, he's a wreck. And just, he's psychologically, emotionally broken from everything that happened in Los Angeles with Griffin beforehand, where he lost his woman, whereas revealed later in the film, he had a relationship with this woman who was having an affair with him. And he never really told anyone that, and Griffin knows about that and kind of plays it here and there. Probably not as much as possible, but at least there's all these elements that Spader's really mixing into a compelling character. His performance of the film really drives the interest in the narrative here. What he does here with the character who's so determined to hunt this guy down and trying to get one step ahead all the time, but keeps falling behind of it. And has all these dead bodies laying behind himself to remind him of all its failures. And he's already wrought with so much guilt and failure as it is. It just keeps piling up and driving him further. I just like Spader so much. He's such a magnificent actor. And he does not phone it in here. He's a great actor in this role, bringing a lot of complexities to the surface of what he's doing here, and being a very perceptive investigator. He's always trying to think the thing through, trying to examine all these photographs Griffin keeps sending about these potential victims, trying to find the little clues here and there. I like in the point when him and Mackie are in the entire Vietnamese restaurant, and Campbell says, if he's been watching these people, he might be watching us right now. And he's right. He goes out to the back of the Vietnamese restaurant. He creeps up along the sidewalk, and then the old chase ensues, stuff like that. It's all very perceptive type stuff. He's very much, once he clicks into it, and he's not crashed out in this dump of a freaking apartment and just letting his life deteriorate away, he just kicks onto it very nicely, just like how Spader morphs the character in those type of ways without leaving anything behind. He still has the trauma and all the different things swirling around in his psyche, but he's trying to prevent more of it from happening by kind of going into action when he needs to. So he's kind of clean up his act enough to be functional in this entire situation and still be on top of the entire thing. So really did some things with the character here. I do feel like morphed it into a character that could definitely drive the interest in the story here. And teaming with Chris Ellis portraying Chicago detective Hollis Mackey is just great. This guy is really good in this role here. Just like, I like not his introduction scene, but the one they get right after that when Campbell calls him up after he receives the photographs of the girls. He knows as Griffin behind the murders, and he's calling over. He's in the middle of a chase scene. It shows that he's an action cop. He's chasing him in the car, then he's on the foot chase. He goes off and tackles him. Shows he's got charisma, he's got a certain attitude to him, and it creates a very great way to inform who his character is, and they build that so much with the chemistry him and Spader have throughout the entire film. I like their pairing so much. I like to have a synergy between them. I just like everything he does in the entire film. He does a really good job to embody a very strong character that has a certain empathy for him without having a lot of screen time to really develop much, but it's his charisma on screen that gives you the character to connect with so much in that regard. And Marisa Tomei as Dr. Polly Beelman. It's an interesting type of thing. Like I said, she doesn't have all that much screen time. She's, of course, Academy winner at this point in time, so that gives her a lot of notoriety and stuff like that. But it's one of those actors I feel like is very much underutilized. Like, she's a great actress, put in a role that really doesn't have anything. She's there to kind of highlight the sort of psychological aspects of Campbell and the kind of relationship that she kind of sees between him and Griffin, and then be just kind of this damsel in distress in the third act. There's not really character development for her. It's not much about herself that's important to the story. It's not really much for her to really act that much in the film. She's just kind of like there for name value for the film to kind of hang something on and not really give her much of anything else. Also like Ernie Hudson. He's a big special agent in charge of the whole thing, and he's a great actor. He's so goddamn good. So under-recognized. And then the kind of role like this, like, he's got a few scenes. There's nothing really special for him to do. He's pretty much underutilized in that regard. And of course, I do have to talk about Keanu Reeves' performance in the film here. And I can definitely see the fact that it's kind of clear he's not giving his all. And don't tell me he can't do a dark role. Because he can. Because this exact same year, in Sam Raimi's The Gift, he put on a fantastic performance. Like, this thing is completely out of the box for him. And he's doing a very dark, volatile, intimidating role. He can definitely do it. He has the skills to pull different things out of himself to create a very compelling performance. In this one, there's a lot of stuff written on the page for David Griffin here that is interesting, could be played in certain ways, but because Keanu is in this sort of under duress situation, I don't feel he's giving it his all. And I don't fault him for that in any type of way, because it's terrible circumstances he's stuck in. He's trying to at least show up on set, do his work, but not give him the aces that he could definitely give in the entire thing. So there's a lot of things with David Griffin here that is very interesting. The psychological play between Campbell and Griffin could be very interesting and very compelling, and how they kind of write certain things does feel like there is a certain potential there, but because we got a certain situation here where he's not really giving his all, so we don't really get that edge that you need from the performance here. Like, even when Spader and Keanu Reeves are in the scene together, I feel like I kind of waited for like something to really kind of click, and like you can see they probably had a good relationship between Spader and Reeves, but never really kind of manifests itself on screen to really get something out of it. there's like a couple splashes here and there. Like when he's kind of chasing the kind of homeless girl, whatnot, through the entire warehouse, and he's got this like real good smile when he finally catches her. It's kind of creepy. And he's got a couple moments throughout the film that work that way. And of course, his charm works when he's kind of courting the victims, when he's kind of endearing himself to them, they kind of get close to him and whatnot, and then kind of turn the tables later on, the whole thing. So it's like there's a lot of things on the page that really kind of seem interesting to play up more, but they never really get the screen time for it and never get the traction from it because of the situation Keanu was locked into in the course of making the film here. And even in recent years, the topic of The Watcher has come up in various interviews with Keanu Reeves, and he's got nothing but bad things to say about it. It's like it's a horrible movie, terrible experience. It's like every bad thing possible comes out of his mouth when he thinks of this movie. And that's kind of a bad thing to do to a guy who's known as one of the nicest, loveliest people in the freaking industry. Like, no one has any bad words to say about Keanu Reeves. Anyone who's worked with him thinks he's the best guy possible, total professional, consummate, generous type of performer, all the type of stuff. And to put him through an experience this bad, where he has absolutely nothing nice to say about it, is a pretty bad feat to put the guy through, and just a really negative mark on the reputation of the person who put him through that experience. So I could really see the other version of the entire film where, like, it's just a little cameo role. You kind of play a big mystique through the entire film, kind of use some light and shadow to kind of obscure it throughout the entire film and not really reveal them until like the end. You get like a really one or two scene, great performance from Keanu, and he calls it a day. I think it really could have worked very well stylistically in the entire film, but as it is, you got a lot of problems behind the scenes with the talent and certain things like Spader's doing a great job, but everyone else is kind of really underwritten, underutilized in that regard, like Ernie, Hudson, Marisa, Tomei. They really could have gotten a lot more things out of those actors to beef up the entire film here. And the one guy you kind of forced into a much larger role is not giving his all to really kind of make it a great performance there. So it's a very wonky type of thing dealing with the entire cast here. Like, there's a lot of great talent, just not utilized to the great degrees it could be. And the music in their film from Marco Beltrami, who had done like Scream, Mimic, The Faculty, a lot of good horror films at this point in time. It does kind of serviceable job. He was like, there's nothing that really stands out too much, but it does nice thing to make things suspenseful, kind of bombastic when they need to be, when there's kind of like a chase sequence or something like that. Good things in some place here. Like, there's nothing really special here, but it kind of does a nice job in that regard. But when you kind of like start adding in like the Rob Zombie songs, are very much like really hot at the time, don't age very well, kind of mixing them into the entire film, where generally a film like this could feel a little bit kind of timeless. You got to transplant it maybe earlier in the 90s, later in the 2000s, stuff like that. Kind of make it with a certain style, whatnot. You kind of make it so it doesn't feel like it's really much of an exact moment in time here. Put these songs here where like there's certain music of certain eras that don't feel like they're just of their time, and they don't really kind of transcend their time and don't age as well as they could. And so I just feel like kind of contentious they kind of plug those songs in there. Not a knock on the songs themselves, but integrating them into a film like this does felt like it was kind of like trying to grab something to grab attention or whatnot, to plug in any old thing that felt like hot and topical at the time. So it doesn't really work well. And of course, the main title music that Beltrami puts in, along with that kind of really stylized opening title sequence, it's kind of this weird techno electronica type of thing. It just felt really weird. The entire thing with the visuals and the music just felt like, this is so 2000 to me, and it's not giving the best impression up front, looking on the same 24 years later. So, like that, coupled with the entire like video point of view shots of Griffin and stuff like that, kind of weird stylistic choices that don't hold up well over time. Like I said, it's a story set we've seen a bunch of times before that have been done extremely well in some cases. The entire cat and mouse where the killer's kind of latched on to the cop and whatnot. He's playing games with them. It's all been done so very well, and sometimes not very well. And this film doesn't really play with the elements that well. It's like there's a lot of psychological things you can really delve into and really accentuate, and of course use a lot of the visual language of film to really tell the story in much more interesting ways that never get played with. And so it's like there's all this stuff that's psychological. Spader is very good, but there's nothing else beyond him in the film really giving anything to it. And that's the difference between a really seasoned, well-oiled director that knows the craft and all that type of stuff, and someone maybe new to the game, doesn't have as many tools to his arsenal and whatnot that kind of tell the stories in very eclectic type of ways to kind of like show, but you're not really kind of making the audience feel what you want to feel from these characters, from these situations, from these ideas and the themes that you have laid in there. So I could definitely see a much more seasoned director, even like an Andrew Davis who did The Fugitive and stuff like that, or another people like a Fincher who's very much high on that end, who could play with all the psychological elements, like it's a major play set, all these different things. Like there's so many directors who could really tap into any different types of elements that play different games in the entire film, to play with those elements and have the entire thing come off in a much more dynamic type of way. So it's kind of a point and shoot, by the numbers, sort of cat and mouse, cop and criminal type of game. It's not playing things on deeper levels or having anything going off with it. So it's like, it's a decent enough thing to watch. I'm not knocking it on a terrible level. I've had it on DVD. I upgraded to Blu-ray. I think it's okay. It's just nothing that's going to rock your world. Like I've seen, like it's up on Tubi or whatnot that I've seen recently. And so that'd be a fine place to go. Watch it, enjoy some ads between things, take a break and go back to it. And it's fine. Certainly the CGI elements at the end where the entire warehouse blows up and the fire's terrible. It just really, CGI fire was one of the hardest scenes to get right in the early days of CGI. And it really stuck up badly in the entire thing. So, I mean, with all the problems behind the scenes, the entire thing of potential forged contract, the thing with the producing body kind of taking the script away and kind of expanding different things in different places, and all the things kind of falling apart. Rookie director does a horrible mistake and doesn't have any say in how the script is going to go. So everything's kind of out of everyone's hands here. And it just kind of results in this kind of underwhelming, it's not a terribly smart thriller. There's some few splashes of things that are kind of decent and kind of interesting, and starting a great performance from Spader, but definitely kind of underwhelms overall the entire thing. So definitely like to hear what you guys feel about The Watcher overall there, and how things went down in the behind the scenes development of the entire film here and stuff like that. So thanks so much guys for watching this video. I kind of thought about this film like 2 years ago about doing a video of it, and I'm like, okay, maybe I can finally get around to doing it. So here you are. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, thumbs up on the video. Subscribe if you haven't. Likes, comments, subscribes, all the type of stuff. Super thanks feature to contribute anything directly to the channel here. Patreon to get a little early access to all the stuff we have going on here. And all these are one of the things really help keep the channel healthy, expand things out, and sharing the links around is always a great thing, guys. So thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.